The lamp is burning low upon my tabletop. The snow is softly falling. The air is still in the silence of my room. I hear your voice softly calling.
Hi, I'm Rachel Ash, also known as Rachel Keeney, so all my various social media, which will be somewhere on the screen, probably right over there. We can hope. I am here today to share with you a quick project I did for the Christmas season, inspired by my complete laziness when it comes to Christmas trees. And I wish I was joking, but I'm not. I usually take a really long time to get the Christmas tree out and an even longer time to put the Christmas tree up. My son has taken to making it into a joke, to the point that he has hidden Easter eggs. That's how, well, actually, that's not the extent. Hidden Easter eggs in our Christmas tree as part of Easter. And in fact, we have once had the Christmas tree stay out the full year round, so that we just had to sort of dust off the spider webs and reuse it the next year. It's not okay. But because of this, my son's creativity has flown with it, and he has done a few different things, tongue-in-cheek to pick on me, but also because we are who we are and we like to be creative and weird in my house. He has decorated this very chair before. It's a special chair to us because it's like one of my first forays into serious sewing. I recovered this chair, and so he decorated it and made it into our Christmas chair one year. And this year he came up with an idea of doing one of our dress forms and taking it and decorating it. And in the process of me going, yeah, you know what, I could do one of the dress forms, he even was like, well, could you even do like a bodice? And I said, yeah, I have some fabrics that aren't the greatest. They're pretty. They just, like, you can look at these fabrics and they fray. So, including that $2 organza that I've complained about in 2 previous videos, and I've used up most of it now thanks to this project. So it's I was able to use up some old supplies I already had on hand, and we went straight from just decorating a dress form all the way up to decorating the entire thing into a full Christmas gown. I think you're gonna like what we came up with. I thought the project was fun. I'll take you through my steps, and you too could have a Christmas gown to dress up for your next winter occasion. Come with me and let's get going. So the first thing I needed to do was just set up some fabric on this body. I set it up so that the grain's going up and down. That makes it easier to make sure everything hangs right. And then the next thing is to sort of pat everything in place. So I cut it off. I'm draping directly onto the form with the fabric I'm going to use. And the reason why I did this is because this fabric is kind of horrendous. I picked it because it was pretty. I picked it for my first ever like concentrated corset pattern, and which I don't wear because it doesn't actually fit me right or do good things for me in terms of fit and comfort. But it was a learning experience, and part of the learning experience was this fabric, so fun. One of the things you're going to see me doing is, aside from pinching fabric together to find out where it meets so that I can pin it together, you're going to see me petting the fabric or patting the fabric into place. And the reason why I do this is because I want to find out where the fabric wants to be. You don't want when, and this is one of those learning experiences for me, because I mentioned earlier that, or maybe I mentioned later, I don't even know, that I learned how to drape kind of from Project Runway, so there's a lot of learning in draping for me. But one of the things that I've learned is if you try to force fabric into a direction it doesn't want to go, as soon as you let that go, it's going to try to go back to where it wanted to be in the first place. So what you don't want to do is stretch it into places it doesn't want to be. Instead, you want to find out how it wants to lie when you get it into the position that you need it to be in. So that's why darts and seams are so important. In this case, I really wanted to create some princess seams, just because they lay really beautifully and you can get like the shape you want. So princess seams are the seams that go like over the chest and down over the ribs, and then kind of not in front of the hip, maybe is the best way to describe it. And then you have like a mirrored seam on the back that's proportional to that. And then for this, just to make sure that my my waist of the form was really emphasized, I also did a side seam. But princess seams are those seams right there, and they are really good for really emphasizing the curve, or a feminine curve of a body. So that is what I'm doing here, but I'm very carefully patting all the fabric into those spaces. And again, that's just an essential step to do if you want the fabric to stay in that position after you take it off the form and after you take all the pins out. So it's good draping. I just thought maybe since this is, draping is something that I think a lot of people maybe are scared of or haven't done a lot of, I thought I'd let you watch draping. On the back, you might notice that I'm not making an official back closure. Traditionally, it would be like in the middle of the back, and I'm not making a closure at all, because the cool thing about making a bodice that is literally never meant to be on a regular human body is that I don't have to make it open and close like a normal bodice would. So I'm just going to create a small overlap on one of the two back princess seams, and I'm going to pin it directly to the dress form. That's it. That's all I do. As you might guess, that's not as great of a plan on a human being. Please don't pin things to people. It hurts. But on the dress form, it's perfectly legitimate. So that is my plan. Everything else I'm draping as I should. One less pat down to make sure I don't have any stray pins holding the bodice in place, so I can make sure that where I've pinned it is what's holding it where it needs to be, because if it can't hold up by its seams, it's not good. And then I'm done. And now you see me sewing everything in place. What you missed was me basting everything in place. So I basted everything in place first, and I just didn't get any footage of that, sorry. I got a little mindless and started doing stuff, and then I basted everything in place, and now I'm here sewing it all. But yeah, so I basted everything in place, and that made it really easy for me to take it off the dress form, bring it over to the sewing machine and do this. And now you see me pulling out the basting threads of one end of the bodice, and then you're just going to see me work my way down the bodice. I'm going to sew each seam. I'm going to trim it down. I'm going to take the things I trim off, because again, I just draped this directly on the form because this is fabric I don't love. But I'm going to save all the trims anyway, the large sections I trim off, and I will use them for things, patches or who knows what on things. So I'm putting them in my section. I've got a whole drawer that's just dedicated to small bits of fabric that I could use. So that's where this went. And then and so I trim it off and I take out the basting thread, and then I have a bodice. And that's what you see me doing here. And trimming off, you see that? Trimming off all of that stuff from just where I've trimmed this thing to make this bodice. It falls apart so fast, this fabric does. Not my favorite. Right, and then here you see me rolling up the outer edge, and all I'm going to do is pin that really quickly and seam that up, and then I will have the outer edge that I can lap over on the back and pin it to the dress form. And that's really the goal here, is just to have something nice and clean that is not going to fall apart once it's on the dress form, because it's not going to be worn. It's not going to be taken on and off over and over again. It's just going to be put onto the dress form and kept there as a beautiful decoration. So it's actually the perfect way to use up this fabric, and a good solution. Time to trim the bodice, and what I'm trimming the bodice with is this beautiful navy velvet ribbon that I had left over for a different cosplay. I had need of only just a little bit of ribbon, but as many cosplayers can attest to themselves, a lot of times you need only a little bit and you have to get a whole lot. So that's basically what happened here. I don't mind because it's pretty ribbon and fairly decent quality. So I am just stringing around the bodice right now. If you're curious what it's hanging from, the top of my dress form has this kind of pointed knob at the top, and it's perfect for hanging a spool of velvet ribbon from. So I just used that as the way for me to hang my ribbon while I worked it around the bodice, and that's all I do. I'm eyeballing it straight up. So I just eyeball where it needs to go on the bodice and adjust as I pin. And then when I'm done with the initial adjustments, I stand back, I look at it, and then I adjust some more. And that's what you see me doing right here. And you may notice that around where the princess seam is, there's almost like a bend or a sharp turn. It's too sharp, and I'll fix that in a second. Even with ribbon, just like with fabric, you want it to lay the way it wants to lay, so you're going to try to smooth it to fit its own natural grains. Then I basted it all together. I have been doing so much hand basting on this project. I didn't even realize it until I was rewatching it to put this video together. And I think it's because it's become so comfortable for me to hand sew, because I've been doing so much hand sewing for the Rococo Peach or the Peach Antoinette. I post it under both works because I haven't fully decided. I think Peach Antoinette has a nice ring to it. Let me know in the comments below if you have a preference. But I am doing a lot of basting on this project because I'm just really comfortable with hand basting at this point, and it made it just so much easier than pinning things and hoping that the pins stay in place. So that's what I did all the way for all of these ribbons that go around the bodice to make sure they stayed in place. Also, if you're new to hand sewing, I'm just going to let you know ahead of time that it's generally agreed that you should not use threads as long as mine, but I hate rethreading my needle, so I am. After that, I had the basted ribbons exactly where I wanted them to be, and I sewed them in place. I started by sewing the outside edge of the bottom ribbon. That is going to be the bottom edge of my bodice, and I just sewed as close to that edge as I possibly could. After that, I folded that edge down and I'm pinning it in place so that the edge can be sewn back down, and that really does become the final edge. Now, I'm going to tell you that if this was going to be something I was wearing, this is not what its final form would look like. I would definitely, honestly, I would probably be lining it to protect all these seams. But even if I was doing something, because this is a pretty modern bodice, but even if I was doing something older, I would be finishing a lot of these edges with a whip stitch or something like that to make it clean and make sure it wouldn't fray as best as you can with this fabric. But this is just going to sit on form. It's going to be fine. So instead, I sew all these edges together, and then I trim it down, and then it's all fine. And that's all I do. It's kind of nice to not actually have to worry about it too much. So that's all that it takes for this part. Okay, after that, I have to pull out the basting stitch, which you can see is a white thread, says E to C. Now I go off screen because I actually do that a lot on this recording, and I'm really sorry about it. I just was in a hurry a lot. I trimmed it along the way several places just because the velvet ribbon wanted to hold on to it pretty hard. But aside from that, the basting came out pretty easily here because it's right down the center, so it was unlikely to cross with other threads. And then I finished it off with a bow that I attached in the middle where the knot was. And after I had it firmly attached, to make sure that the bow stayed up and looked like pretty and elegant, I secured the edges of the bow and the loops of the bow also to the bodice where I wanted them to lay. to help me figure out what I was going to do, I hung the lights. So first I pinned under the wires, and then I pinned in between two of the braided wires, so that very carefully, so that I did not pin any actual wire. And over that I draped the skirt so that I could kind of get a rough estimate of how full it would be. And then I basted it down. I basted, I'll call them pleats. They're technically pleats, I think, when you fold it down sideways, but they are really rough. There is no measuring going on. There is not even like a semblance of being even. It is literally just me laying the fabric down and basting it as I go. So we'll call them pleats, but they're only barely pleats. After that, I actually hand stitched the whole skirt and waist, I should say. The rest of the skirt's not even stitched because I used the selvage edges to keep it from falling apart. So that's my hem of the skirt. Yeah, I hand stitched it because this is that same fabric that fell apart after I spent a couple of days making a shirt. If you looked at it funny, the fabric falls apart. So there's no putting this thing through a machine. So I didn't. I did mostly a running back stitch, which is basically you get a few stitches going forward, just like a regular up and down stitch, and then you do one stitch back, and that kind of relocks the stitches in so they are less likely to undo themselves when you go. And that is how I sewed the skirt. I even left the basting on it because it doesn't matter, it's going to be hidden. And then I wrap it around the waist one final time. Make sure that the crossover is in the back. Make sure that the layers cross each other over so they kind of disappear a little bit. And then I'm just going to pin it onto the dress form because a dress form's not human and can't feel that pain, as far as we know. The final piece is the bodice. I still really love how that bow, I feel, makes it kind of have that final touch. And that's it. Enjoy this shaky cam forced whole body visual because I don't have the right camera for this. So after this, I'll have a couple of full form shots for you. I can't fit both me and the dress form full form into this because I'm too tall. I'm actually squatting a little bit right now even to fit both of us in the shot. It's just the way it is for me. But I did want to have a moment to talk about this finished dress and how it turned out, and I just think it's fun and it's actually so much faster to put up than a tree. Just putting that out there. It's a skirt, some lights, a bodice, and done. So fast. In fact, I like it enough I might keep it out for a while even after Christmas just to have as a decoration in the background. But anyway, not like I did my tree, actually around me where I hang out. But I think one of the things that I found really exciting about this project, aside from the fact that it was just for fun, which was nice, because I've been doing much more serious, big projects lately, is that it's let me see how much I've grown. About 4 or 5 years ago when I was first doing stuff like this and I got my first dress form, I had never used a dress form before and I had never draped for myself before, and I honestly learned how to drape by watching Project Runway. So it was literally a case of me going, I think this is how you do it. To go from that to being able to do this all in about a day was pretty exciting. I've come a long way and I'm pretty proud of how fast and far I've come. My knowledge is so far, and that's thanks to all the great resources I've had. I always have my mom to call when I need that extra help. I have all of these wonderful YouTubers that are out there teaching everything about costuming. and sewing, and I have just like a million resources out there. People on Instagram that are so wonderful. If you ask them a question, they'll tell you. Where did you get that? How did you sew that? It's the community is beautiful, and I have been so fortunate in my journey to have this type of people be part of it. So I guess I wanted to express my gratitude because this was something I got to do that was special and fun, something that my son and I designed together. But it's also something that got to reflect what I've grown and how I've grown because of you guys. So thank you. And I hope you have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and wonderful New Year. Bye.
I read again between the lines upon each page the words of love you send me. If I could know within my heart that you were lonely too, I would be happy just to hold the hands I love on this winter's night with you.
I can't help how tall I am. Okay. Don't fall. Now it's too high. Now it's just right. See how this looks. Oh, look at me. I'm just a normal person sitting comfortably in my chair with a llama pillow because llama pillows are great. Now I have to think about what I'm saying. So, it's a llama. It's climbing. Then it falls. Climb llama. Or llama. So, hi.